welcome, Debbie. Thank you so much for being a guest on our space. We're really happy to have you here. I know Anna has spoken really highly about not only you, but the way you participated in the panel. She really enjoyed your panel. So I'm really excited to have you here. But first off, why don't you just tell us a bit about, yourself, Debbie Deer Productions, and we'll go from there.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Matthew and Anna. It's lovely to be on the show, and I can definitely share more about me. I'm Debbie Deer. I'm a creative technologist, a speaker, I'm an educator, I'm a performer, all in the digital media and immersive space. Currently, I'm the Immersive Lab Coordinator at the Center of Innovation and Entrepreneurship. And I also am an educational partner with the Toronto District School Board. I work with numerous other school boards on just, introducing STEM and immersive technology to secondary and post-secondary students. And yeah, I'm super passionate about this work. I've been doing it for about 4 years and have had the privilege to be awarded for this work. And recently, we were nominated for a Rain Dance Film Festival for our works with Agile Lens in New York, doing a Christmas Carol VR. And it's just been a really busy year because I think folks are catching on to immersive tech, STEM, and Web3, as you are all aware. So it was a pleasure speaking at the Blockchain Futurist Conference this year and exploring more about, blockchain and the future of that. And yeah, that's primarily the essence about me, but there's a lot more, and feel free to ask.
I do have one technical question that you may or may not be able to answer this. And I'm kind of just thought about this because of at the moment. My big problem with the VR stuff
Yeah.
is the goggles make me motion sickness.
Yeah.
And have they worked on that at all a bit, or is it still kind of iffy for people like me?
Yeah, it's so interesting. We just had a demo at Centennial where I work, and the two people who tried the headset said the same thing. Visually induced motion sickness is just par for the course, unfortunately. They've done a lot of research. There's even a conference in Toronto solely based on visually induced motion sickness, VIMS, and that's run by UFT. What happens is it's difficult to predict who will suffer from that. But what's essentially happening on a neurological level is that the brain is disassociated from the body. So your brain is triggering to your body that you're being poisoned or you're hallucinating, or there's some disassociation that you have to be mindful of. So it's hard to change that with hardware. But what they've been doing with like the Oculus 3S, for example, is that they've been sharpening the resolution. They've also like even changed the way that the space between the eyes relative to the forehead fits, because that also helps with the spatial configuration. And they're looking more towards AR so that instead of being fully disoriented in this 360 space, we're actually still grounded in 3D, well, or 3D, because we're able to see our physical space through AR merging with the digital world. So if you've ever used AR, Matthew, you'll probably notice that when using a filter, or if you've used AR glasses or anything like that, or your phone, you won't have that motion sickness because you're still aware of both the virtual and real environment.
That's interesting that they're doing this study. And I have not
Mm-hmm.
tried those glasses, but that's definitely something I'd like to try. I
Mm-hmm.
just remember I think they first released the PSVR for the PS4 many, many years ago, and they were showing it at EB Games. And I immediately had to like rip the goggles off, and the employee was not happy with me when I did that.
Yeah.
And I was like, either I rip the goggles off or you're about to clean up what's about to happen. You take your pick.
They're like,
But I
take the
will
goggles
say,
off.
yeah, I will say though, like I've had a lot of motion sickness, like growing up as a child,
Mm,
car sickness, plane sickness. So I've always just kind of assumed that's part of that.
yeah.
I've outgrown most of it, but I my guess is there's a correlation between like those things, just by my experience.
There is, because when in these studies as well, Stanford University has done some studies, Harvard, University of Australia has done some studies on this. And in their research, they found a few like tried and true things. One is that women are actually more susceptible to visually induced motion sickness. And anyone who is prone to it is, like you mentioned, kind of accustomed to having other forms of motion sickness. So they kind of make it seem like it's something you're born with. You know, they can't really explain it, but it's just the way your composition is made.
Yeah, and I still can't do like the roller coasters and all that. Not for me.
Yeah, yeah, it's really trippy. I mean, it all depends on how your brain works. It's kind of like neurodivergence. Your brain is just wired the way it is to process the information that you do, and we're physical beings, so we're not meant to be like singularity cyborgs, but we're trying our best to merge the two worlds, and it's definitely still in its infancy. So I think as we go along the line, like these issues will definitely dissipate because we'll get more used to it.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, I don't really get car sick or plane sick anymore. I still have an issue with boats,
Right.
but so maybe that's something I'll grow out of too, and maybe as will other
Probably.
people. Um, another thing. Sorry, thank you for humoring me. That was not planned. I just you mentioned that, and I was curious if you had knowledge on that.
Hmm.
So like I looked at your website and you just have this wide diverse of clients. You have universities, tech groups,
Hmm.
LGBTQ, and you have this sort of mixture of nonprofit and for profits.
Hmm.
And do you find it difficult to just work with such a wide range of disciplines rather than just sticking to one, or is it something that you're used to?
That's a great question. So my work at Centennial, I actually teach at the Center of Innovation and Entrepreneurship. And we talk a lot about the fundamentals of entrepreneurship. And a lot of it is based on things that apply to any sector, any industry, such as, solving problems, value addition, you know, critically analyzing, your ICA, so your ideal customer avatar. And when you apply that across the board, just the fundamental principles, everybody is kind of the same. Even though the work varies, the way you approach them, in terms of the core reason for working together, it's similar. I will say that when I started 10 years ago with Debbie Dare Productions, I was just out of university and I wanted to see like more women, more people of color, more like diverse stories in the media. So in film, graphics, web, and there weren't a lot of people who looked like me or who were doing that. Primarily focus on arts and education, which was initially my focus and still kind of is. So a lot of my work started off with not-for-profits and, grassroots organizations, but admittedly, that that's where your question really hits home, Matthew, because the reason why I kind of graduated to more corporate or even entertainment based and just diversified is because some of those organizations fundamentally made it difficult for me to work with them. Whether it was just because of a mentality that they have or, how they view business. All of us know the concept of starving artists. Apologies, there is just a little bit of a busier area where I am, if you're hearing
No worries.
noise. But yes, what I was saying is that sometimes working with smaller organizations or grassroots, it makes scaling a bit more difficult. So this is why I branched out. into other types of businesses. And content wise, it depends on the client, the type of work that we do. And also the whole sector changed, in terms of digital media. Once AI was introduced and I started learning immersive storytelling and, using Web3 in different ways, incorporating that through Debbie Dare Productions and then my tech company, Orion Digital Inc., just became par for the course. So that's why it expanded that way as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think I get what you're saying because Samir, he's really instilled this corporate mindset. Who's listening in right now? Hey, Samir. And he really like I didn't have this experience, even though I've worked with corporate, but I don't think we'd be where we are today with Toronto DAO if he did not put this corporate mindset on us, even though we are a nonprofit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it does sort of we have our weekly meetings, we have our weekly spaces. He holds people accountable, and yeah, this is why we're at where we are today. So I can kind of get what you're saying.
Yeah, and
Um,
kudos. Sorry, go ahead.
no, that was it. I just had a filler word.
That's something that we're teaching in the VR pitching lab. So the AI is very hard on filler words. If you ever want to work on that, but Samir, that's really great on your end, because even today, when I work with what you would imagine would be a larger organization, there are people with a mindset that, really is kind of limiting and doesn't support the success of teams and organizations as much as they could, because they're thinking in a way that doesn't allow proper functionality, proper systems, proper scalability. And though folks might look down on capitalism and corporate ways of being, there's some systematic things that working within a corporate framework allows for expansion. And I can give you an example where I recently worked with a team and I was managing a lot of their like tech departments. And I was emphasizing that, folks need to get paid in a timely way, and we need to be very intentional with our project scopes, and we need to communicate and follow up with folks so that they know where in the project we are. And I was just trying to help hone these administrative protocols and social protocols. And they were really apprehensive to adopt these principles because they were so accustomed to working in a more loose, transparently, somewhat chaotic framework, because that was the norm.
Yeah, and especially when you have volunteers, they you're always grateful for volunteers' help, but they kind of take that turn sometimes too loosely.
Hmm.
Um, in which case, nothing gets done. It reminds me. Did you ever watch that show Corner Gas?
I love that show.
Oh, I know it was my one of my favorites. And there's just this scene where they finally got like real firemen. Like what happened to the volunteer fire men? And they did a skit where someone called him. He's like, I don't do fires on the weekends, and he hung up. And they're like, he took the
Hilarious.
volunteer role a bit too seriously. Like the volunteer.
Yeah, and that's exactly how it is. It's like, but there's a fire right there, and you're like, yeah, it's the weekend though. Sorry. And you're not paying me. So, um, yeah, I think the thing about it is that someone who is very successful in business recently told me, don't work for money, work for results, and the money will come and the success will come, because you're investing in impact, and that's such a beautiful mindset, because it kind of trickles down to everything. It's like, if you want, good outcomes, you have to invest in that. And so yes, there's a monetary value to that, but there's also so many other aspects like integrity. Are you passionate about what you're doing? Is what you're doing a good vehicle? Like with Web3 and tech, we know that these industries are going to just keep growing exponentially. So it's pretty exciting to be in a space where we get to kind of, expand with the times. So yeah, I can.
Yeah, I mean, we so like we get to your point, we do get sponsors for various events, but I'm often finding that I'm invited, and Samir and Anna and I are all invited to like these events that they're very selective with their guest list too, and they're recognizing our hard work.
Yeah, and kudos to you guys for that, because this is where that impact and the results shine. Like, I'm seeing the hard work as well as I researched Toronto DAO or D. Do you say DAO or DAO?
Gao.
Okay. Um, yeah, and it pays off because I think people who have high standards and once again who are passionate about what they're doing and how it impacts people, they want to work with people who feel similarly, because it expands your reach. It makes you feel good when you know that someone has the same ethos that you do. So your efforts are going to land somewhere.
Yeah,
That's
thank you. That's very kind of you to say.
Yeah.
Um, so you met Anna at Futurist, and you did briefly mention Web3 in your little introduction at the beginning of this space. How does Web3 fit into, or crypto fit into your plans in the future?
Yeah, so I've always been interested in crypto since the big Bitcoin kind of emergence. But I recently got into it because through my work with education, we've been exploring models where students earn while they learn. And in an economy where things are becoming increasingly more expensive, I feel that, caregivers and parents are pretty excited about the idea of, investing in their kids and their kids also being able to invest in themselves by learning about blockchain technology, and how they can incorporate that in learning and gaming environments and just, you know, exchanging digital money and currency in the ways that are possible through blockchain. And the decentralized factor is also pretty exciting because, with everything that can happen with banks, etc., and just the general unstable climate that we're all going through, it's really, to me, reassuring to know that there is another option out there that is viable, even if it's not fiat. And it has this interoperability as well. So, me being in tech and gaming, it's great that I can use blockchains like Polygon, to an Ethereum to, like, invest, but I can also use it to make purchases, and continue to build digitally in areas that I'm passionate about.
Yeah, and like, are you at all in the metaverse, or because I know you're in VR a lot, and
Mhm.
metaverse, while it's sort of that word has died down a little bit, it's still pretty big in this ecosystem.
Yeah. Well, for blockchain, they invited us to showcase two things. One was our NFT gallery, which is kind of a metaverse concept because through Spatial IO, which is also a gaming platform or a social VR platform, you're able to upload your NFTs and sell them in a virtual gallery. So, and it's Web3, or WebXR, so it's accessible through your mobile, laptop, pretty much any device, which makes it great. And so that's an example of how we utilize that in our work and our art. And then we had a digital Zen garden, so a digital tranquility space for wellness and meditation, and that's through Horizon Worlds. And even though it wasn't monetized, there have still been talks about how you can use social VR like that. Like, for example, VR chat is now adding a component to where you can have more monetization in these worlds. So, such as purchasing NFTs and selling digital assets and selling tickets to events in VR. So the discussion is definitely being had. It's just, to be honest, it's really clumsy right now. So unlike just exchanging blockchain directly through, digital wallets and other platforms like Coinbase, etc., doing that in the social VR space is like really cumbersome. So you'll probably have to like have an environment, let's say spatial, and then you'll have to have a third party link, and then you'll have to exit that environment, then you'll have to make the purchase, then it sends the info to your wallet and the token, etc. But it's not contained in one space. And that's
Mm,
the big problem right now.
that situation you just described sounds like something I wouldn't want to do if I was like just a participant.
Yeah, it's pretty clumsy, but if you're like an NFT collector and you happen to be in one of these spaces, then you're more adept at like navigating. So even if you're trying to like access a wallet or send money to a wallet, if you have to do it through third party means, it takes a little longer, but if you really want it, you will. And people do.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. Things have kind of grown a little bit, but using DeFi and crypto stuff, it's kind of the same thing. You have to add a chain to your wallet. You have to put on the manual chain. Then you have to make sure the crypto goes to the right chain, and then you have to. There's a million steps that I'm kind of used to by now. But if I
Right.
tell it to somebody who's not into crypto or Web3 at all, they're just like, "Nah, forget this."
Yeah, most people really are turned off of blockchain. Not those like us who are, enthusiasts or really interested in it, but the average person just feels like it's too mystified, and as you said, like there are just too many steps.
Although I'd like to point out, I had to bill a client in Europe, and they don't do crypto, and I'm doing like I had to set up a wire transfer for the first time in my life, and that was
Wow.
cumbersome for me. My whole time, I'm like, I had to go to the bank, I had to get all this information, all these words that didn't make any sense to me,
Yeah.
and then fill out the form. And I'm like, can you send me Bitcoin or something? Like, this would be a thousand times easier for me. Oh, we don't do that. I'm like,
Yeah,
all right. Um, so I would argue that the traditional finance system is cumbersome for people like us.
that's actually a great point, because it's so true. It's like, who needs to walk into a bank? Like, you only walk into a bank if it's something pretty serious, and like there's no other digital version of what you're doing, which I can barely think of examples of that. So yeah, I mean, people
Well,
are just holding themselves back really if they're not willing to open up and learn in this time.
and I think it'll cost them probably like $50 to send me this money.
Yeah.
That's like versus like five. So $50 isn't life changing, but that's $50 is $50.
Yeah, and if you even add the physical time that it takes to like get in your car or take a bus, take an Uber, drive to the bank, stand in a line, do a transaction, time is also precious. So, yeah,
And I'll get the money in a week instead of instantly.
right. So, really, I think that the fiat system, which we all know, it has opened up a lot more to Web3 and blockchain, because they've had to, because they realize we live in a very immediate time. And if you are not efficient, then you're going to miss out, you know?
Yeah.
And this is why, even with AI, folks are, terrified of AI taking everyone's jobs. And I understand where the paranoia comes from, partially from a lot of dystopic sci fi movies and predictions. But if you really look at it from a standpoint of like, this can help to absorb 90% of the cumbersome things I don't like to do, if I understand it, then I can
Yeah.
direct my energy into more productive places, and places where actually human input is more needed, more valuable, and pretty impervious at this point.
Yeah, my only view on AI is don't give them guns. As long as they
Oh
don't
my
give them
gosh.
guns, I'm happy. There's like 50 movies on that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't, you see, if I comment on that, because AI is not like tangible, AI doesn't need us to give them guns. AI can
Uh,
literally send guns to itself.
yeah, that's true. So we're messed. We're
Yeah.
hopefully that's a couple hundred years away.
Yeah. Or it just never happens. Yeah.
So you on your website you have this project XR, and can you tell me more about that?
XR. So we do a few XR or extended reality projects. Right now, we have like an immersive lab program where we go to high schools and universities and we bring headsets and AR tech. Sometimes we even bring like intermediate or junior coding, and teach folks how to take their curriculums, let's say in history, and we use tech to engage the students. So we'll have like AR classrooms or VR museums. And that's been pretty successful because schools are very analog right now. And if you are creating the next workforce that's coming directly into AI and who knows what else in the next 5 to 10 years, then they're pretty much at a disadvantage learning the way they did 10, 20 years ago. So because schools are so far behind, like this is the reason why these programs, well, this is the reason why we created these programs, but also why they're currently popular.
And like the students are very receptive to this, or I'm curious to what their thoughts are.
Yeah, most of them want to play gorilla tag right away, or they want to do some other form of gaming. But once they see how what they're learning can be even that much more fun, that much more engaging, they're super involved, and the retention rate, if you're looking at studies and research, is significantly increased. So students are happy because they combat boredom, and the other part is teachers and administrators are happy because it allows them to innovate their curriculum.
Yeah, it is amazing how technology sort of like changing the classroom. I mean, they banned phones from my classroom when I was in high school, and now they're like, I my godson just got a tablet because they're doing some program where he needs to have the tablet in the classroom, and it's just amazing how far we've come. Because if tablets didn't, I'm aging myself, but tablets were not a thing when I was in high school. They came shortly after. I'd like to point that out. Very shortly after I graduated. But there's no way they would have allowed that in the classroom if they were a thing back then.
Yeah, and you're right. Like that is an indicator of how far we've come. Even I did a STEM camp um, 3 weeks ago, a summer camp, and it was called the Heart of the Village STEM Acoma Camp. So it's a camp that's primarily for students of African or Caribbean descent. And when I went in the classroom, the teachers were like, everyone put their phones away, put their tablets away, and like listen to Debbie as the instructor. And I was like, well, keep them out. We will need them. And here's the software you're going to download, and here's how we're going to use it. And the teachers are like, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. We forgot about that. We're so used to seeing it. So,
I,
sorry, go ahead.
I was like, that's really cool. Sorry, just off the cough comment.
Yeah, and the students were like so happy because they were like, oh, they're always telling us what to do. And they weren't using their phones for like TikTok or whatever other time wasting doom scrolling they do. They were very engaged in our educational software and like learning, aspects of coding and AR. So yeah, they they see the value in it for sure, and the teachers themselves were curious as to how they, even without me being there, can keep this kind of technology in the space because they saw how the students connected to it.
And the students are like, "Ha, teacher, I'm allowed to keep my tablet and phone out."
Right, right. And then when they put the VR headset on, they're like, oh my gosh, we're so not used to being able to play games while we learn. And like, you know, a couple of students, because they started learning about the process of development and like, how do you import assets? How do you make worlds? They were, you know, talking about like wanting to become game developers and like how they could get started with that. And, you know, seeing like a very young mind have light bulbs turn on and say, well, how could I apply this? It's really inspiring.
Yeah, and plus, I'm sure they're thrilled to have a break from math or something.
Yeah. And I do let them like play for fun as well. Like, so I have games on there that are student approved. So Gorilla Tag is a really popular one. They're allowed to be in Horizon Worlds as a break because I think knowledge is power, and playtime is also really important for adults and, you know, kids or really young people. So yeah, I think it's important for work to also be play.
Yeah, and one thing I also wanted to ask you, maybe you're allowed to say this and maybe you aren't, because sometimes I've asked this question and they're like, I don't want to upset people. But do you have a favorite project that you've worked on?
Oh my gosh, Matthew. Who's listening? That's the question. Like, who is
Yeah.
listening right now? A favorite project. Okay. So a favorite project would be the Nefertiti experience. That was my first like immersive VR slash VR film that I ever did. It was based on Queen Nefertiti of ancient Egypt. It was like an Afrofuturist piece. We hired maybe 45 people for the project, filmed over the course of 3 days. We had pre production for maybe 2 months, and then we got featured by Toronto International Film Festivals, Deep Focus, and that kind of started my career in, you know, tech with Orion Digital Inc. And the reason why it was fun was because the way it came about was the piece was supposed to be initially a theater piece, but COVID had just happened and folks were like, oh, we can't meet in person. And then my buddy Jason, who I always tell people he likes a lot of like um, weed. So, and he's a gamer. And he was like, hey, I think we could make them virtual, like the Mandalorian. So, like a virtual background and physical people. And we just spent 3 months in a studio that was donated to me. We painted it green ourselves. We learned Unreal Engine ourselves. We learned how to light folks ourselves. And we just created this whole studio project that looked like $100,000 project with like 40K. And
Wow.
20 of that was my money, which I didn't have. So it was just such a it was such an ambitious project, and like everybody came out and was so like enthusiastic, and we were all so excited about this new immersive XR world that we just put our everything into it. And yeah, it was just very fun, very exciting, very tiring, but we did it and it felt great.
Wow, that's really impressive. It's amazing what like I call it the COVID skill, whereas everyone came out with a skill during the pandemic, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And for me, it was COVID. It was cooking. I learned how to cook during the pandemic, which isn't as impressive as what you've done, but it's mine.
Cooking is essential to living, so I mean, that's awesome that you learned how to do that. What's your
Thank you.
specialty?
Um, I want to say, I can make really good orange chicken.
Mm.
Yeah, orange chicken I'm pretty good at. I'm also good at making mayonnaise,
What's
which is like an
that?
art. It's kind of similar to chicken parm. It's like a Argentinian dish.
Yum.
I have to say that he's also good at cakes. He bakes
Cakes?
cakes, yes.
Oh, wow. You went all out, Matthew. You were like,
I was good at baking prior to the pandemic though, because my parents didn't buy junk food,
right.
and my workaround was they would buy the individual ingredients that make up junk food. Um, so like I couldn't buy brownies, but I could make brownies with the stuff in the kitchen.
Wow. That is such an
So
awesome lesson, though. Like, you have to work for your junk food.
yeah, I think at first they were thrilled that I was doing that, but then they didn't realize I was taking it too far. Um, so, so they're like, okay, we didn't expect you to make all this cookies and brownies and cakes. We were expecting you to make like one cake and then call it quits.
Right.
They're
Well,
like, now you seem to be having more junk food than most people in your age now.
that's like a huge pendulum effect. It's like, yeah, we
They created a monster.
we taught him how to fish, and he brought back
Yeah.
fish. So,
Too much fish though.
yep. I
Um,
think that's awesome.
so you briefly talked about Tech Jump, but Anna knows a bit more about it. Could you go into a bit more detail than you did before at the beginning? Because it did seem very interesting, and I'd like to learn more if possible.
Sure. So, this was kind of like a research and dev project on how we could take this 58 long year legacy of the Toronto Carnival, formerly Caribana, and bring it into 2025 with immersive storytelling at the secret location in the Distillery District. So the project was exec produced by Eldon Maskell, and his mother was Beverly Maskell, who was Canada's first Black female mogul in the hair industry. And I actually did a documentary on her in February. So we hadn't met yet. He had seen the documentary, loved it, and was asking about working with me. Then, when this project came about through CMF, he reached out and said, "We want to tell this story using immersive technology. What can we do?" So, the research and dev part started by formulating the script. So, the idea around it was that we were going to showcase the 58 years. So, if anyone knows anything about Carnival, it's based on the African freed slaves from the Caribbean who, when they were freed, they wanted ways to celebrate that freedom. So they would introduce various performing arts and storytelling aspects. So part of that was costumes. A lot of that would be mimicking, you know, certain Europeans, or they would be mimicking ghosts or whatever was from their, ancestral history. And then they turned this very dark period of time into celebrations. So it was really a lot about like resilience, and the immigrants to this country 58 years ago, um, didn't start with much, but now this is the largest cultural festival in North America, grossing over $400 million each season, which is less than a month. So it was a huge legacy to kind of speak to story wise and, you know, project. So the venue was really excited because they have never done anything like this before. And our premise was that we were going to show the old, so show, the 1800s when this started to now the 2025s, where this carnival is like in Brazil, it's in Japan, it's in the UK, it's in Toronto, it's in New York, and just show with all these bright costumes, colors, music, storytelling with immersive technology, like how big and grand this thing was. And then we're also juxtaposing that with like the younger generation that doesn't know the history and kind of just wants to party. So yes, they're wearing costumes, but they're more like very skimpy pieces of string, and they're partying with their friends, but they're not remembering the legacy per se. So we were bridging the gap between those two worlds, using AI. So we, for example, started looking at Google VO. So when we were like, okay, we need mocap, we need animation, but it's going to cost us $10,000 a day, because most professional studios, that's how much they cost to do like a full day of live mocap shooting and cleanup and everything. So within our budget, that wasn't quite affordable. So our workaround landed with Google VO, which, if you've ever tried it, it's extremely impressive. Like, the realism is impressive. The prompting is crazy. If we've all seen all these videos where we can barely tell the difference between whether it was an AI video prompt or if it's real life. So we actually built a whole character based on these AI videos, and we had to refine the prompting and do a lot of engineering, and we had to create a lot of like maps and Bibles and just technical tools to navigate that. But that was one aspect that was very exciting and also life-changing, because we were recognizing that if studios are charging $10,000 to do what we did in 10 minutes, certainly not with the same precision, but it to the naked eye, a lot of people wouldn't be able to tell whether this thing took 3 months with a specialized huge team versus 3 days, in a live studio. So we were discovering that. And then finally, the end product turned out to be a lot more scaled back from what we initially envisioned, which had the Google VO, we had AR, we had motion sensors. So folks could walk by the screen and then it would animate and it would change costumes and it would reveal various aspects. So it was really exciting, but we did have to like temper our expectations. So we landed on really beautiful projections and motion graphics that had these historical photos that told these three impressive stories throughout, the past, present, future. And we had live dancers, so we had stilt walkers that represented the history and the times today. And we had a DJ, and we had steel pan players, and we had a host, and the audience just simply loved it. So sorry if that was long-winded, but it was 2 months of highly intensive work, and that's my best way of summarizing it.
No, that was fantastic. Thank you for explaining that. I also had no idea it generated that much revenue, like the carnival generated that much revenue in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, so the season itself starts in April. So that's when folks are like making costumes, they're booking venues, they're booking parties, but the actual festival itself is only a weekend long.
So much activity and economic benefit in 2 days.
It's huge. It's huge. And I used to be on the board of Caribana Arts Group. So I worked with them for 2 years and I knew the inner workings of it. And so the passion, as someone who is also Caribbean, and the just immense backstory, it was really close to home for me. So this project really meant a lot to be able to share.
Wow, that's incredible. Again, congratulations on your work with that.
Thank you.
Wow, we've gone through a lot. You've given us so much information, so much to learn about. But is there anything else about yourself or Debbie Deer Productions that you haven't talked about that you would like to bring up?
Well, I would say, when I initially started a business, I thought doing business was going to be easy, because my parents are both business people and they made it kind of look easy. But I realized that there's so much more than just being an artist or being passionate or even great with people. Like, there's a lot of strategy and learning and like systems that are formulaic, just basic things, your accounting, how you commercialize your project, how you add value, you know, your bottom lines, your ROIs. There's some really quote unquote boring fundamental things that I didn't know that took me so long to kind of just utilize in a way that made my business more of a business and less of a hobby. So I speak to this because I know there are a lot of artists, and maybe less so on this platform, but there are a lot of people who might have a similar experience, and I'm just encouraging them to put as much effort into that part, if not more, than into the creative elements. Because it's so much more fulfilling when those elements are working well and they're a well-oiled machine. And so you don't have to feel like you're grinding for a cause or just a starving artist. You can actually do really, really well if you just get out there, learn the right things and apply them.
Wow, that's really good stuff. Yeah, I think we can all use those words to help us achieve our goals too. Um, but yeah, this has just been incredible. Can't thank you enough for joining us. And thank you, Anna, for arranging this whole space. Nicely worked to you as well. Do you have anything you'd like to add, Anna?
I'm just so thankful that Debbie agreed to participate. We are so happy to have you here, Debbie. It was very special, and we learned a lot from you. And we hope to see you in our events in the future.
Yes, thank you so much, Anna and Matthew. I really, really enjoyed being here and really feel privileged to be able to share space with you about all of this. So definitely invite me to your upcoming stuff and hope to see you there.
Yes, see you there. And once again, my name is Matthew Glezos, the co-founder of Toronto DAO. We have our weekly space every Thursday at 2, usually with very few exceptions. So I look forward to seeing you next week, and I hope everyone has a great weekend up ahead.
All
Take care,
right.
everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.